I'm Sarah Mikesell with the Poultry site, and today we're joined by Dr. Tom Delfonso. He is the Worldwide Director of Animal Nutrition at the U.S. Soybean Export Council. Thanks for being with us today, Tom.
Great to be here, Sarah. Thank you for having me.
And today we're going to talk about a challenge that broiler producers face that goes beyond feed cost, delivering birds to the processing plant at the right weight, at the right time, with the consistency that premium buyers demand. Because missing buyer targets cost real money. Let's get into this, Tom, and we're going to just dive into a few questions here. When broiler producers think about feed decisions, the conversation also often starts with cost per ton. Why do you think it's an incomplete picture, and where should the conversation start instead?
Great question, Sarah. I'm glad you asked it. Many times in agriculture, we're focused on least cost feed formulation, lowest cost per pound or kilogram of animal protein produced. But we're forgetting about a very important part of profit, and it's more than half of profit. It is revenue. And revenue means that you're getting those birds to the processing plant consistently, uniformly, on time, with a good rate of growth, good feed conversion, and all of those components go into what makes bottom line profitability for a poultry producer that's captured at the processing plant.
Flock uniformity gets discussed a lot in broiler production. Can you help producers connect the dots between what happens in the feed and what happens at the processing plant gate? What is uniformity actually worth in dollar terms?
Very good. So let's start with the consistency of those essential amino acids and the metabolizable energy. Those components are what primarily make the chickens grow and grow to their genetic potential. Today's modern genetics demand a high quality fuel in the diet, and that means a high quality soybean meal derived from U.S. soy. When you have such a critical ingredient in the diet, providing those essential nutrients consistently, and the animals get to the processing plant uniformly, they get more revenue. Here's the reason why.
Right.
First, they may get there faster, which means that over time you can get more cycles. Second, they get to the processing plant within target, and that's where the highest revenue comes in. So you get more revenue when the body weights are within the tolerances, the lower specification limit and the upper specification limit. You get less per pound or kilogram if they're low weight, or even if they're higher weight, you get less per unit. So depending on the operation, that can be one of the biggest factors in revenue.
It's a window to hit, right, Tom? You're trying to hit this specific window, right?
You're trying to hit a specific window. And if the birds do not grow predictably or uniformly, you're not going to hit that window.
Very good. You've referenced buyers in the past who operate with very tight tolerances on bird weight. How does the quality of the protein source in the feed influence whether a flock hits those specs or misses them?
Okay, let's think about a whole population of animals, a flock of chickens. And if there's a nutritional deficiency, it doesn't affect all of the animals at the same time. It's those marginally performing animals that are going to be affected more. So you get a rate of growth, but you get a widening when you have inconsistent digestibility. So and it adds up as the animal goes from starter to grower to finisher diet. It's hard to recover uniformity. So one way of doing it is to overfeed nutrients, overfeed the essential amino acids. The top ones aren't going to perform any better than their genetic potential, but the bottom ones will come up. This is costly. It's better to start with high quality, critical ingredients in the diet, like highly digestible soybean meal derived from U.S. soy.
One of the core claims about soybean meal derived from U.S. soy is superior amino acid digestibility, which you were just kind of talking about. What does that mean practically for a nutritionist formulating broiler diets, and why does consistency and that digestibility matter as much as the level itself? You were kind of alluding to this previously.
Sure, sure. Let's pick on one essential amino acid, lysine. So in soybean meal, you might expect the lysine to be 3%. I'll pick a nice round number.
Right.
Um, but not all of that lysine is digestible. The digestibility can be affected by how the soybean meal is processed. If it's over processed, there could be heat damage. There could be heat damage coming from the beans that are harvested in wet climates, like tropical climates. So, for example, soybeans coming from Brazil are often heat dried with wood burning mechanical dryers. This causes heat damage, which affects the digestibility of those essential amino acids and metabolizable energy. And lysine is again another a good amino acid to talk about in this process. There's a chemical reaction called the Maillard reaction, where lysine will bind with carbohydrates to make them undigestible. So you get lower energy, you get lower digestibility of that essential amino acid. So for the feed formulator, thinking that I'm going to get a high quality soybean meal, it's essential that they source the soybean meal derived from US soy to have that low damage, to have that very low and uncommon heat damage, and to get the highest digestibility they can to formulate the diets at least cost to meet the nutrient requirements of today's high performing genetics, animal genetics, and to get that performance that you expect.
Right. And leading into that, modern broiler genetics have incredible potential. What does it take nutritionally to actually unlock that potential? And where does soybean meal quality fit into that equation?
Yeah, great question. I like thinking of modern poultry genetics as high performing race cars, and you wouldn't want to put an inferior fuel
Right.
in that race car. Similarly, when we look at soybean meal derived from U.S. soy, it is providing the essential building blocks. It is the core ingredient when it comes to the essential amino acids that are going to help rate of growth to get to the genetic potential. And also, soybean meal is digested very efficiently with today's animal genetics. We're
Right.
getting more metabolizable energy and net energy out of the soybean meal because of the animal genetics. And in fact, soybean meal derived from US soy has nearly as many calories per unit as corn does. So it's providing we think of
Right.
soybean meal as providing the essential amino acids, but it's also providing a great source of metabolizable energy and net energy for all types of animals consuming it. So these are the building blocks that lead to the animals performing uniformly to their genetic potential.
Broiler operations typically run 35 to 42-day production cycles. How do incremental improvements in average daily gain translate into additional cycles over the course of a production year? And what does that mean for a producer's bottom line, Tom?
Sure, and in fact, today we're seeing broiler production going even higher in the number of days that they're produced to get higher body weights.
Yeah.
For those rotisserie chickens that we like seeing, and to get more animal protein, per shackle at the processing plant. So to get those animals to the processing plant at target weight uh, requires that every diet, whether it's the starter, the grower, or the finisher, has the nutrients that you expect, that you're not overfeeding because that's just wasteful, and that increases feed costs, and that it has the digestibility and the consistency that you expect so that the animals perform, and that's where you get revenue. When the animals
Right.
grow faster, it means that over time you can get more cycles per year. And so the consistency of this critical ingredient in the diet helps for planning and scheduling.
Yeah.
So whether it's a 35-day or a 56-day bird, you want them at target weight because you're scheduling the processing and you have an expectation that they'll be at a particular body weight. So when they grow faster and they get there a day sooner or so, You can plan for that. You can count on that when you have the right ingredients in the diet, and that means having soybean meal derived from U.S. soy is the core ingredient in the diet.
It's partly about meeting expectations for those buyers, right, Tom?
Oh, it's definitely about meeting expectations for many buyers. It could be the buyer of soybean
Yeah,
meal. It could be the buyer of the poultry products coming from the processing plant.
right.
Particularly those going to restaurants and institutions where restaurant chains, fast food, where you need to have a consistent product, so you have a consistent cooking process
Right.
to get a uniformly cooked product, not overcooked, not undercooked.
Interesting. U.S. soy carries a sustainability story rooted in how American farmers manage their land. From a broiler producer selling into global markets, how does that sustainability story connect to their own business growth opportunities?
Yeah, very good. It connects in many ways, surprisingly. So the first are the physical characteristics of the field, and the U.S. soy farmer typically comes from a multi-generational family-owned farm who knows their soil and knows that they're passing it on to the next generation. It's not just sustainable because there's no deforestation. It's sustainable from a business perspective. It's sustaining the business from one generation to the next.
Right.
Having that knowledge of what part in your field may need some inputs means that you don't overuse inputs to the soil. So this is also part of sustainability. When we look at the end user, I think there's a number of similar characteristics here. Many times our poultry producers around the world come from multi-generational businesses who have reputations that they're producing high quality and sustainable poultry products for the consumers, and they have reputations that they've built that's dependent on everyone upstream providing them sustainable ingredients consistently. And soybean meal derived from U.S. soy is the biggest opportunity for a animal producer, a poultry producer, to lower their carbon footprint, to improve animal performance, and lower feed costs all at the same time.
Thank you, Tom, for all the information today. This was really great to walk through some of these, some of the process and some of the story behind the consistency of U.S. soy. So we really appreciate your time. Thanks again.
Thank you for having me, Sarah. I enjoyed the conversation.
Very good. If you'd like to learn more, visit usec.org for the latest research and resources. This information is partially funded by the U.S. Soy Checkoff. This is Sarah Mikesell with the Poultry Site.